I used to feel so proud telling people what my husband did for a living. He's a pilot, I'd say, like it made me part of something exciting. Glamorous, even. The kind of job that came with airport hellos, long-distance phone calls, and reunions that felt like first dates. Mark would send me pictures from different cities, hotel breakfasts, skyline views, his cockpit window at sunset. I kept every one of them. Back then, I believed every word, every image, every "I miss you." But something shifted. It started small. His trips got longer, his reasons fuzzier. Schedule changed, he'd say. Layover got extended. And I wanted to believe him. I really did. But then came the other stuff. The way he'd take his phone into the bathroom, how his flight bag never left his side, even when he got home. Like he didn't want me near it. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I'd seen too many crime shows. But still, something didn't sit right. Then came that Tuesday night. He said it was a last-minute red-eye to Toronto, kissed me on the forehead, grabbed his bag, and called a taxi from the end of the block like he always did. I stood at the door and waved, the loyal wife seeing her pilot off. But something in my chest, something whispered he wasn't flying solo. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence he left behind. Normally I found comfort in it. A quiet house meant he was out there, flying safely, doing what he loved. But this time, it felt different. The silence felt loaded, like a room full of unspoken words. I kept wondering why he'd booked his own taxi instead of letting me drive him like I used to. Why he barely looked me in the eye when he said goodbye. The next morning, I poured myself coffee and stared at his mug still drying on the rack. It was the same one I gave him on our anniversary. World's best pilot. Funny how those 4 words suddenly felt like a punchline. I kept trying to brush it off, to be rational. But my gut was louder than reason. It wasn't just that something was off. It was that everything felt rehearsed, too perfect. And Mark? He was never perfect at lying, unless he'd gotten better with practice. I started noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before. How his flight schedule was never in our shared calendar anymore. How he didn't talk about his crew or destinations like he used to. It was like I was getting the surface version of him, the polite script, the fake smile. And once you realize someone's reading you a script, you can't unhear it. You start replaying every scene, wondering what lines were real and which were just part of the show. The next time he said, "I've got a quick turnaround in Denver," I smiled like always, but inside, something clicked. I didn't argue, didn't accuse, I just watched. The way he avoided my eyes when he zipped up his bag, the way he hesitated before saying, "I'll call you when I land." It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it, like he was walking on a wire, hoping I wouldn't notice the tremble beneath his feet. I hugged him goodbye, holding on a little longer than usual. Not out of love, out of study. I was observing him now. Every breath, every blink. He'd always been a confident man, but lately, he seemed cornered. And the thing about people backed into corners? They either come clean or run faster. I had a feeling Mark was the running type, and I was tired of chasing shadows through airport terminals in my mind. That night, I sat on our bed, scrolling through his old texts, his itinerary emails, every little breadcrumb he'd ever left behind. And that's when the idea hit me, not like a lightning bolt, but like a slow burn. If something was wrong, I needed proof. And if Mark had truly turned our marriage into a layover, I was done waiting at the gate. I didn't dive into detective mode overnight. It started with a simple question. When exactly is his next flight? That shouldn't be hard to answer for someone married to a pilot, right? Except Mark had stopped giving me straight details. So I checked the public schedule for his airline, just to see. Just to reassure myself that I was overthinking things. But the moment I saw it, a gap where he claimed he'd be flying, my stomach dropped. I triple-checked, searched by flight number, departure city, everything. Nothing matched. He said he was heading to Chicago, but the airline had no such flight listed that day. Maybe it was a private gig, a reroute. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, like I always had. But deep down, I knew. When you love someone, You know their rhythm. And Mark's? His had gone silent, like a song you used to hum in your sleep that now just echoed. Still, I didn't want to confront him with nothing but gut feelings and missed flights. I needed more. Something concrete. So I made a choice that felt equal parts bold and awful. I slipped a tiny GPS tracker into the lining of his luggage. It took me less than 5 seconds, but when I zipped the bag closed, my hands were shaking. That moment, it was the quiet line I crossed, from wife to watcher, from believer to investigator. Tracking him felt wrong at first, like I was the one betraying something sacred. But that guilt faded fast the moment I opened the app and saw his location pinging in a completely different city from the one he told me. He'd said San Diego. The tracker? It placed him in Phoenix. No connecting flights, no explanation. Just one big lie wrapped in a pilot's uniform. My heart didn't break right away. It twisted, like it was trying to turn away from the truth but couldn't. I didn't even cry. That surprised me. Instead, I got quiet, focused. I reached out to a friend of ours, someone we both knew through the airline, someone I trusted. Casually, I asked if Mark had been on the schedule that week. There was a pause, a long one. Then she said, "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but no, he hasn't flown since last month." My stomach flipped. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there, staring at my phone like it had just slapped me. The betrayal wasn't just in the cheating, it was in the ease of it, the smooth lies, the routine of it all. He'd built this whole other life like a second flight path running beneath mine, hoping I'd never notice the turbulence. And the worst part? I might not have. If not for one tiny thing. A hotel charge, buried in a bank statement, almost missed. 2 guests, 1 room, not a work expense. Just another night somewhere he said he wasn't. I stared at that hotel charge like it might suddenly rewrite itself, like maybe I'd misread the city, or the amount, or the date. But no, there it was. A 5-star downtown hotel, during the exact days Mark had claimed to be on back-to-back flights. And the booking? It clearly showed 2 guests. Not a crew stay, not work-related, just 2 people sharing a room, while I sat at home folding his laundry and wondering if I was losing my mind. I started replaying everything. The phone calls that cut out too quickly, the texts that used to come like clockwork but had slowly gone silent. And suddenly, it all made sense. The vague itineraries, the late-night showers, the way he stopped asking about my day like it had become background noise. He wasn't distracted. He was elsewhere, fully, shamelessly elsewhere. And I'd been keeping the lights on for a man who'd already checked out. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry on the bathroom floor or call him in the middle of the night demanding answers. I was past that. If I was going to face this, really face it, I needed to see it for myself, with my own eyes. And so I did the one thing he never expected me to do. I booked a flight of my own. I hadn't flown alone in years, not since before Mark. And now, there I was, boarding a flight under my maiden name, heart pounding in my chest like a drum I couldn't silence. I wasn't going for closure. I wasn't even going for confrontation. I just needed to see. Needed to look at the truth, raw and unfiltered, without his explanations softening the blow. I wanted the lie to stand on its own 2 feet, so I could finally knock it down myself. I booked the same hotel that showed up on the charge, same city, same weekend. The woman at the front desk smiled warmly, handed me my key, completely unaware that she was placing me right at the edge of my own heartbreak. I checked in, sat in the lobby with a coffee I didn't drink, and watched the revolving doors like a hawk. The hours dragged. I must have read the same headline 5 times without absorbing a word. But then, around 6 p.m., I saw them. He walked in first, Mark, in jeans, not his uniform, laughing, relaxed. Then came her, younger, effortless. One hand on his arm, the other pulling a suitcase, and then she kissed him. Just like that, like it was normal, like I didn't exist. And the way he smiled at her, that was the part that cut the deepest. Not the kiss, not even the lie. It was the look. He looked free. I didn't move. I couldn't. My body felt like it had turned to stone, anchored to that lobby chair. People walked past me, laughing, checking in, living their lives, while mine cracked in silence. I watched him lean in and whisper something in her ear. She laughed, touched his chest like it belonged to her. And him? He soaked it in. Not a single flicker of guilt. Not even a glance around. He didn't act like a man sneaking around. He acted like a man who was home. The rage didn't come right away. I thought it would. Thought I'd explode, march over, scream, cry, do something. But I didn't. I just sat there and watched my marriage disintegrate in real time. It was strangely quiet, like watching a car accident through thick glass. I saw everything, but it all felt far away. Until one moment, one sharp second, when I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in the window behind them. And I didn't recognize her. That woman staring back. She looked tired, hollow, like someone who'd loved too hard, given too much, and stayed too long. That was when it hit me. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being erased, replaced. Written out of my own story like I'd never existed. And the worst part? He didn't even look back. They disappeared into the elevator, still wrapped up in each other, and I finally exhaled. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, holding my purse like a life raft, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Everything I needed to know had been handed to me in that lobby. No explanations, no excuses. Just the image of my husband kissing another woman like it was the most natural thing in the world. Back in my room, I moved like a ghost. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't check my phone. I just stared at the wall, replaying every lie he ever told me, trying to match his words to the man I saw tonight. And I couldn't. They were two different people. The Mark I married would have never done this. But the Mark I followed here? He'd done it before. He knew exactly what he was doing. And the scariest part was, he didn't seem sorry at all. I sat there for a long time, long enough for the sun to dip low and the city lights to blink on outside the window. And then I made a decision. Not to scream, not to confront, not yet. I had a plan now. If he wanted to live a double life, I was going to make sure he heard every word of it from both sides of the wall. I didn't storm the room. That would have been too easy for him. A dramatic scene he could twist into hysteria. No, I wanted facts. I wanted his own words to do the talking. So I booked the room next door. The front desk didn't blink, just handed me a key and wished me a pleasant stay. Pleasant. I almost laughed. I waited until the hallway was empty, stepped inside, and pressed my ear against the wall. It was thin. I could hear everything. At first, it was just muffled voices. Then laughter, the clinking of glasses. Her voice, light, playful, too familiar. His? I hadn't heard that version of him in years. Effortless, youthful, like a man who wasn't carrying the weight of a marriage. And then, like a gut punch, I heard my name. Not in guilt, not in regret, but as a punchline. He was joking about how uptight I'd become, how I used to be more fun. She giggled, and I died a little inside. I hit record on my phone. Not because I needed to convince anyone else, but because I needed to convince myself that this was real, that I wasn't crazy, that the man I'd loved for years was laughing about me through a hotel wall while holding another woman. And as he whispered promises to her, ones that used to be mine, I sat in that quiet room and thought, this is the moment I stop being his wife and start being me again. I barely slept. I didn't need to. Adrenaline kept me upright. I just lay there, phone in hand, listening, saving, every careless word, every vow he recycled, every sigh that once belonged to me. It was surreal, hearing him like this, not angry, not defensive, just free. And yet I wasn't devastated anymore. I felt clear, like the fog he'd wrapped around me for so long had finally lifted, and I could finally see the damage for what it was, deliberate. By morning, I had hours of proof. I didn't even need that much. A few minutes were enough to gut me, and more than enough to prepare me. I packed my bag slowly, like I wasn't just folding clothes, but folding up a chapter of my life. The whole trip back home, I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I just stared out the plane window and thought, he has no idea what's waiting for him. It wasn't revenge. It was something colder, quieter, a reckoning. When I got home, I set the scene like it was any other day. I lit a candle, made breakfast, sat at the kitchen table with my phone beside my coffee cup, and when I heard the keys in the door, I smiled to myself, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. He walked in like nothing was wrong, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I'd missed him, and I said, calm as a whisper, I hope your flight benefits include housing, because you'll need a new place to land. He froze. That's what I remember most. Not anger, not denial, just that flicker of confusion turning into fear. I slid the phone across the table and hit play. His voice filled the room, her laugh, his promises, his lies. There was no shouting, no demands, just the sound of truth taking up space. He didn't reach for the phone. He didn't speak. Just stood there, staring at the life he'd spent years building and quietly burning. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need his version anymore. I had reality in high definition. I watched his shoulders slump as it all landed. Not just that he'd been caught, but that the mask he wore so comfortably had finally cracked. He muttered something weak about not meaning to hurt me, but I didn't flinch. I just stood, picked up my coffee, and walked to the sink like I was rinsing out the past. My silence said everything, and it screamed louder than any accusation ever could. He packed a bag. Just one. No begging. No dramatics. Maybe he knew there was no winning this time. Not with words, not with charm. As he left, I didn't watch him go. I sat back down, picked up my phone, and hit delete on every flight photo he ever sent me. But I kept the recording. Not for revenge, for remembrance. Because sometimes, freedom doesn't start with forgiveness. It starts with finally hearing the truth. After he left, the silence felt different. Not heavy like before, lighter. Like air returning to a room that had been sealed off for too long. I didn't rush to tell anyone. I didn't post cryptic quotes or change my relationship status. Instead, I opened the drawer where he kept his precious watch collection. The one he always said was an investment for both of us. And you know what? He was right. It was ours, legally. And now it was mine. I took each one out carefully. Rolex, Breitling, Omega. Little trophies he wore to show off the life he built, the life I held together. I had them appraised, sold them, and transferred the funds into a new account with only my name on it. Not out of spite, out of restoration. Every tick of those watches had once measured the time I wasted on him. Now, they were measuring something else entirely, my freedom, my future. Then I sat down and wrote. Not a diary entry, not a revenge post, a story. I called it Life with a Pilot, The Truth Beneath the Clouds. At first, I didn't think anyone would read it. I just needed to get it out of me. The lies, the shame, the silence. But when I hit publish, something happened that I never expected. Women started reaching out. Strangers. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Their messages poured in like waves. Some were heartbroken, others furious, but most of them said the same thing. I thought I was the only one. And that's when I realized my story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a mirror, a wake-up call, a life raft. These women weren't just reading my words. They were finding pieces of themselves in them, and that mattered more than any apology I'd never get from Mark. I started replying, listening, holding space for women who'd been gaslit, ghosted, cheated on by men who wore uniforms, suits, smiles. I shared resources, encouragement. The raw truth, not just about betrayal, but about rebuilding. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I started healing. Not the kind of healing where everything magically feels okay, the kind where you stop bleeding and start breathing again. Then one morning, I got an email from a producer. She said she'd read my story, cried twice, and wanted to talk. She wasn't pitching drama, she was pitching truth. A limited series based on what I lived. She said, "Women need to see this, to feel seen." And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a voice, a force, a woman who'd been grounded and chose to rise. The day the series was announced, my inbox exploded. Friends, old coworkers, even women I hadn't spoken to since college. Some were surprised. Others said they always knew I was stronger than I let on. But one message stood out, from a woman in Atlanta. She wrote, "You gave words to a silence I've lived in for years." Watching your story made me walk away from mine. I sat there, holding my phone, realizing that my deepest wound had become someone else's lifeline. I never set out to be anyone's inspiration. I just didn't want to feel invisible anymore. Didn't want to keep pretending that the love I gave was ever truly seen. And now, my truth lives outside the shadows. It's being filmed, acted, watched, shared. Women sit on their couches with wine and tears and say, "That's exactly how it feels." And in that, there's a kind of justice. Not the courtroom kind, but the kind that cracks open silence and makes room for others to speak. As for Mark, I don't know where he is. Maybe with her, maybe alone. Doesn't matter. He took off chasing something shiny, and I let him go. Because in the end, he flew into someone else's arms. And I soared above it all.